Tonight we welcome Charlotte Martin-Schreider. Correct pronunciation?
No, but it's okay.
Okay. And yeah, Charlotte is the lead UX designer at Trussell, which is a mortgage tech company. She's been a UX designer for 5 years. So yeah, we're going to learn some tricks. So welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you. So hi everyone. Today I present you user research methods to kickstart your projects. I'm a UX designer, currently at Trussell. I've worked for a lot of startups and on a lot of hackathons. And that's where I really learned that anyone can practice UX and anyone should be aware of what it is. And user research is a huge part of user experience. And that's why I'd like to share with you some methods to be able to do it yourself, even though you're not necessarily designers. So you already asked these questions, but I wanted to know who you are. And I'd love to know if you could raise your hand if you're a student at Le Wagon. Cool. Developer. Entrepreneur. Cool. Visual designer. And UX designer or researcher. Cool. Okay, so it's okay if you don't have any experience in user experience, because I will go through the basic, and the methods that we're going to see today are really simple and anyone really can apply them. So first, what is user experience? User experience is a term that has been brought up by Donald Norman, which is a great figure in the industry. And he said, I invented the term because I thought human interface and usability were too narrow. I wanted to cover all aspects of a person experience with a system. So since he introduced this term, it's kind of lost its meaning, and there's a lot of different definitions of what user experience is. One of them, from Nielsen Norman Group, which is the group founded by Donald Norman and Jacob Nielsen, which are two great figures in the industry, are saying that user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its service, and its product. What it means is that user experience is very broad. So everyone in a project is involved in it. And that's why I think that user experience is a team effort. It's not one person. And making a great experience is not about hiring one UX designer that is going to create amazing experience. It's about a whole team that thinks about the users, and that all the way they're creating the project, they always think about them. So everyone can impact with user experience. For example, a developer can introduce a bug, and it will impact the user experience because maybe the user is not able to complete the task he wants to complete. A product manager, if it doesn't prioritize features based on user needs, then we might end up with features that people actually don't use. So why user experience is important, according to Forbes, in the top 20 reasons why startups fail, 4 of them are completely linked to user experience in some way. For example, 42% of startups don't find the market needs. User research helps you understand the needs of users and therefore build a product that addresses them. And in that way, you'll be way more you have more chances to actually find a market needs if you listen to them in the first place. Then 19% get out-competed. Now imagine you have a startup and you don't do user research. You don't talk to your users through the building process, and your competitor does. There's a lot of chances that because he listened to the user, he's going to build a better product because it addresses their specific problem. So you get out-competed. 17% fail because of poor product. So it can be because there's a lot of bugs or because it's not usable. And if it's not usable, people can't complete the task they want to complete, then they leave and they use something else. And 40% ignore customers. So if, for example, you talk to your customers and you do user research, you invite them in your office, users are aware that you care about what they think and what they want. So they won't think that you're ignoring them. And something I hear a lot is that user research is expensive and time-consuming, but it doesn't have to be. So building a product or a service people don't want is expensive and is time consuming, because you spend all this time building something and at the end nobody uses it. And if you do user research and you know what people want right from the start, and along the way you validate all your assumptions with them, then all this time is not wasted because you build a product they will use. Also, some people think it's expensive because hiring a UX designer is expensive. But the truth is, if you're just starting, you can do user research yourself, and you don't necessarily need to hire an expert to do it right from the start. So it's not going to cost you money at that point. So what is user research? First, user experience without user research is not UX. It's not UX because a great user experience is an experience which meets your users' needs and expectations. And user research is going to provide you with the methods to find out these needs. So if you don't do user research, you can't find out those needs. Therefore, you're not doing UX. And so when people design, even if they hire UX designer, if they don't involve UX in the process, they design only assumptions. And if they test them with the end user, then they can validate those assumptions and those ideas that they have. So to give you a bit of overview of where user research can happen and what kind of UX activities come in the cycle of building a product, well, as you can see, it can happen at any stage. On the right, it's all UX methods and activities that you can practice, and on the left you can see the different stage in a project. So you can see that there's methods for every single steps. And the methods that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to show 3 methods, can be applied at different stages. So there's a lot of research methods out there. All the little dots that you can see there are different methods. There's more or less complex. We're not going to see all of them, obviously. We're only going to see 3 of them. And I'm going to explain you what is qualitative versus quantitative, which is, I think, the most important thing to know when you begin. So qualitative methods is really about understanding why, because you sit with people, and it's qualitative time because you can ask them questions and ask follow-up questions on what they're telling you. So it allows you to dig really deep into their thoughts and how they see things. So it can be interviews, usability studies, and focus group, for example. There's a lot more methods. Today we're going to see interviews and usability studies methods. You can start with 5 users. It's actually a number that has been brought up by Jacob Nielsen, which is one of the gurus that I just talked about before. You can, if you want, I left a link and I will share the slides so you can dig a bit into how many users you should use, but it's telling that 5 users is the minimum to get 85% of accuracy on the result that you get on usability tests. So just to show you that you don't have to do user research on 100 people, 5 people is enough. Then you have quantitative method. I'm not going to show you quantitative method today, but you'll soon understand what it is. Basically, it's about learning how many people do something, how many people go through the same flow. And for example, you can send email surveys, intercept surveys, look at your analytics, the behavior flow, for example, funnel analysis, etc. This you can do from 80 users. Again, there's a study from SurveyMonkey on how many people you should send your survey to, so feel free to look at it. Again, it's for 85% accuracy. And now we're going to dig into the fun stuff, which is the first method, which is called job to be done. Has anyone in the room heard about it? Or one person? Cool. Okay. So the story behind the job to be done is the following. McDonald's wanted to increase their sale of Milkshake. And what they had in their office is a lot of information about their users. So like their demographic, what's their age, they're female or male, etc. And they asked a couple of them, like in their target users, to come and tell them what is the best flavor that you want. So they give them multiple flavor or milkshake, and they ask them to choose which one's your favorite. They choose, they change their milkshakes, and nothing happens. And so someone came in and say, okay, we're not doing it the right way, and we need to actually go out there and ask people, why do you hire a milkshake? So the term hire is a bit weird to use in this context, but they said, like, you hire a service to do something. And so why do you hire a milkshake? And they actually realized that they just wanted something to fill their stomach and keep them alert on the road. So they go and McDonald's in the morning, pick a milkshake, go in their car, go on their way to work, and they need something so that they feel they won't be hungry at like 10 a.m. and also that they stay alert at all time. And I show you afterwards the other benefits of this method how this method impacted McDonald's. So how does the job to be done method works? I know it seems all a bit abstract, but we actually dig in a concrete example afterwards. So it's an interview with a predefined set of questions, and that's why it's really easy to use, because you don't have to think about what you're going to ask the user. You can just use questions predefined for you. You usually use it in late stage, so when you have a product already and users. Otherwise, you can use it when you're just starting and that you have competitors. You just do it as if you were working for your competitor. You wouldn't like to do it on recently activated users, and you'll see why in a bit, because we ask a lot of questions around remembering things. So you want them to have lived the event not long ago. And usually the method lasts 20 minutes per participant. It depends on how much they speak. So that can vary a lot. So what will you learn with this method? First, you will learn what is the journey users go through when they buy your product and how do they use it, what motivates them to buy your product, what frustrates them in their life and with your product. And also, and this is very important, you will learn about your true competition. So if we go back to this example of McDonald's, basically, when they did this study, they realized the competitor of McDonald's for milkshake is not Burger King. It's actually donuts, or it's actually a banana, for example. Because when people didn't buy a milkshake to complete their task, they bought a banana or a donuts. So it shows you why your true competition for each project that you have in your company. So there's a lot of different scripts on the web that you can find. I will show you the one that I usually use and that I like the most. There's shorter ones. This one is quite long, so I won't go through all the questions, but for example, the first one is, when did you purchase the product? Where were you? What time of the day was it? And kind of help people to remember what was the experience they had when they bought a milkshake, for example. And it's also help you to break the ice and set the stage for the rest of the interview. So then you have other questions which are more about building a timeline of how they bought the milkshake, what happened, and get them used to the feeling of remembering, which is like, for example, when did you first realize you needed something to solve your problem? Then you can ask them questions to uncover this true competition that we've seen before. For example, tell me about how you look for a product to solve your problem. And then you see, oh, actually, last time I bought a donut, not a milkshake. And then the last question are more about exploring their emotion. What is their emotion when they buy? For example, did you ask anyone else about what they thought about the purchase you were about to make? So also you can ask additional questions that I ask myself. Sometimes when I don't have time and I have to shorten it up, I try to be more straightforward. For example, you can ask more directly, what was the problem you were trying to solve when you purchased the product? You can also ask, do you feel that the product solved your problem and why? If you want to dig a bit into more detail. And you can adapt this method to your own scenario. So let's say you're not a product that you can purchase or buy, but you're free, for example, where you can replace it by download or sign up or first encounter a product. And the product can be replaced by a service or your company name. So now let's do a use case, because I know it's a bit abstract. So the use case, is about Anki. I work for Anki. It's a startup that helps developers learning on a daily basis so they can improve their skills. And we use the method job to be done to try and figure out why do people use our app and why did they download it in the first place. So I'm going to go through 3 questions, and I hope you participate with me to try and understand what we can get out of this. So first, meet Jane. I asked her what was the problem you were trying to solve when you downloaded our app. So I will read you exactly what she said, and then we can figure out what we can learn about it. So she said, I was looking for something to do during my commute. Something useful. I tried a lot of things. After reading for a long time, I got tired. Plus, it's hard to read on the train when it's busy because there is no physical space. Then I used my phone to go on Facebook and Instagram, but it's not useful. Then I downloaded Duolingo to learn languages, but the lessons were too long to complete. And finally, I found Anki, the 5-minute workout, and it fitted perfectly because it's short and it doesn't use as much data as Codecademy. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think we learned from this? Yeah?
The first one was that she wants to use her time effectively and learn something on the go.
Yeah. Cool.
She didn't want to use much data. They wanted to be like task specific.
Yeah. Anything else? Yeah?
You learn your real competition.
Yeah, again, Duolingo is our competition. It's not necessarily another dev app. Cool. Anything else?
It's really important for it to have good legibility because she reads it on the train.
Yeah, for example. So I did it on my own, so I didn't get as many insights as you did. But yeah, basically, she wants to learn something useful. She has low network data, so she wants something that won't consume too much. She's also short on time, because she's probably getting out of the train, walking in the street, coming back in the train. Then I asked her, when did you first realize you needed something to solve your problem? And she answered, when I changed my job and the commute went from 20 minutes to 1 hour. I left my job, which I was trained for, to do something else. I'm now a community manager for a tech startup. People say that Singapore is the new Silicon Valley. I want to be a part of it. I want to learn something new. Code is my first choice because there is a lot of job out there and it pays well. Again, anyone wants to try and find out what we can learn from this? Yeah?
The length of the journey is probably more around the hour mark, and people would want to actually go on the phone and learn something.
Yeah.
Might not necessarily just be developers who are using it, people who want to learn those skills.
Yeah. True. Anything else? I know it's always the same, but
International audience?
international?
Audience?
Yeah, true. Exactly. Anything else? No? Okay. So, indeed, she has a new job, so it's something that she'd never done before, so she's probably a very beginner. She has a long commute, which went from 20 minutes to 1 hour, so it's quite painful for her. So maybe you want to do something fun with your app. And also she's discovering a new industry, which again is in the beginner, but she's also interested in many other industries because she's trying to expand her possibilities. I didn't mention the international thing because Anki is an international app, so we already knew that we had people from all over the world, but it's a really good point that you can make. Do you feel that our app solved your problem and why? And she said, at first I thought it would, but it took me 20 minutes to understand, not 5 minutes. It's not basic enough. So again, we come back to what we just found out. There is a lot of jargon that I cannot understand. I found myself constantly confused. It's so abstract. If you didn't contact me, I would have dropped completely. But your email made me think twice. So she refers to the email I sent her to ask her to do an interview with me. So again, it shows you how powerful user research is to make people feel that you care about them. And then she said, I deleted your app because my phone was running out of space. I had to clear stuff. I uninstalled a lot of apps at the same time. I thought about re-downloading, but maybe it was just not suitable. So what did we learn here?
The app is not essential.
Why is not essential?
The app, because she still downloads other apps, but she didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we want to have an app? Yeah?
Maybe the file size is actually too big. The file size of the app.
Yeah.
Come out from 1 gigabyte, which maybe it wants to be 500 megabytes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The UX was wrong. It was confusing and abstract for.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It may take people in the company, that are used to the app 5 minutes to do each of the courses, but somebody completely new to it, they
Yeah.
have to take into account that it takes them 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The follow-up contact was good for retention.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a copyright problem.
She what, sorry?
We have a copyright problem, which means that we're not using them essential and more straightforward copyright.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, basically it's too hard for her, although we have beginner content, but it's not beginner enough because we were targeting developers. So we thought beginner developer already know some stuff. But actually people have never been developing before they use the app sometimes. Also, our phone is running out of space, so can we reduce the space we're taking? So now it's up to you to tell me, how could we use these learnings to improve Enki? You actually gave a lot of ideas before, so yeah?
You can improve the introduction to the programs. When you sign up for a program, they give you a little introduction to it about what to do. Basically, have to explain. So some of them maybe an introduction to the program, meme or simplistic or something that
Yeah.
people who aren't programmers can understand, or whatever they will be teaching you.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say shorten the class or make sure you're able to do it comfortably within the hour mark.
Yeah.
Less jargon.
Yeah.
Maybe use more examples, because she complains things are too complicated too.
And too abstract. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Also, again, with the data storage thing, maybe once she's finished 1/5 of the course,
Yeah.
maybe complete that and download the next part of it. So
Yeah. So it takes less data. Yes. Completely. Any other ideas? Okay. So yeah, we can make sure we have a complete beginner content. We could have a glossary to reference technical terms. We could also have an offline mode to reduce data consumption. And we could try and reduce the app size, for example. So all these things are things that you learn with user research. So imagine you didn't do user research. How would you have known about all these things? You probably wouldn't. So I showed you before quantitative and qualitative. What you can do when you do qualitative user research, like we've just done, is match it with a quantitative method. For example, a survey. So we did that at Enki. And we asked 700 people, what were you hoping to achieve with Enki when you downloaded the app? And that was the result. So you can see that Jane is here. Feel productive during my commute. She represents 20% of our users. So now you might want to say, we don't want to solve Jane's problem because she's not the majority of our users. But you also have to be aware that when you build a product, some people might be a minority, but will help you to actually share it to more people. Therefore, this minority might be very important for you. So you have to take your business into consideration, even when you match it with surveys. But it can give you a pretty good understanding of how many are in the same situation. Yeah?
How did you reach out to 700 people?
So we have a huge user database. I think when we did it, we had 100K users. So, we sent it to a lot of people and they answered. Yeah. Again, it shows also that when you send a survey to users, not all of them answers. So you can never be 100% sure that they're all in the same situation. So what you can also do is implement these questions if they're really important to you in the sign-up flow, for example, or make it mandatory for people to respond, which we did afterwards. Okay, cool. So method 2, guided fantasy. So the more we go along, the shorter the method are to apply. So the story behind, or before, does anyone here knows guided fantasy? Okay. I told you about it. You're cheating. But yeah, it's not a very famous method, but it's really good. So it's been invented by Tim Mott, who was working for Xerox PARC at the time. And someone, his boss asked him, okay, we need to build a word processing program. And at the time, there was no word processing program. So a computer was used by developers. And for example, you could write line of codes, and you could go through your text with your keyboard. There was no mouse, right? So when you wanted to know where you were on the computer, you knew it because the letter you went on was blinking and had a white background. And so he did this method of guided fantasy, and you will see how it is afterwards, and you will understand how he could get these findings. But he understood that writers and journalists that he was going to build the tool for didn't want to be on a letter, but between two letters, because they want to be able to insert things. And so he invented the cursor. And that's how we have a cursor now. So don't worry, you will understand what's the methods. How does the guided fantasy method works? It's an interview with one key question, and you can apply it at any stage of your project, but I find it's the best for when you have no idea of what exactly you're going to build. You want to do it on prospective users, and you will understand why. And it lasts approximately 15 minutes per participant. Again, it depends on how much they like to talk. So what you will learn with guided fantasy is the user mental model. So what do they think? How do they see things? And also their thought process and their perception of the world. You will also know how much do they want to do themselves? So really, do they want to interact with things? Or do they want machine to do things for them? And what things do they want machine to do for them? So where do we need to have them? And where are they happy to continue doing what they're doing? And then you can also find wow effects. So they will tell you about the things that would make the experience so much better. So the script is very simple. You put them in front of a black screen. So you take a computer, put them in front of a computer, and turn the screen off. And you ask them to imagine a tool of their dream to do a task. So for example, imagine you have a tool to assist you in code reviews. How does it work? What can you see? What can you do? What else can you see? What else can you do? So as you can see, it's really just one question. And the other questions are just here to help you dig into their thoughts. So we're going to see the use case of Prodo.ai. It's a company funded by the CTO of Enki. And it's an artificial intelligence company that wants to help developers write better code. And so for them, I met Alex, who is a developer. And I asked him, imagine that you have a tool to assist you when you review the code people add to your open source project. So basically, for the ones that are not developers, when you had an open source project, people can add code to this project, and then you have to validate it and say, okay, it can go through, and it can be part of the project. So I asked him, how does it work? And he said, the tool works like GitHub, because GitHub is cool. In the pull request, I can see the changes that were made to the code. I can approve or disapprove it. I can see an overview page where the contributor explains what it changed, why, and how. I like the side-by-side comparison and the syntax coloring. And all this first part is just describing what actually exists in GitHub. So it's not very useful for us, right? But at least we know what part of it he likes. And then he says, code reviews are important because I cannot let unknown contributors add things to my project without validating. I don't trust them enough. If people can write whatever they want, it's impossible to follow the code. Furthermore, no one writes perfect code for the first time. Again, what can we take out of this?
Needs to be integrated with GitHub, because the person likes GitHub a lot.
Yeah? Cool. Developers, it's your turn to speak. So I don't think you over can participate as much. No other ideas? Yeah?
It is a very low level of trust.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah? Yeah?
So there must be like a built-in control where he's able to approve or disapprove what someone
Yeah.
has changed or
Yeah.
about to change. And then only once he approves of it will it be pushed to his master.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So first, he really likes his current tool. So maybe we want to do something similar. Maybe we want to integrate with it. Maybe we want to look closely at it and see why he likes it so much. Also, he says that perfection doesn't exist. So it brings us to the trust that you brought up, is that really trust an artificial intelligence to be perfect or not. And also, one of the most important things that he's doing with code reviews is that he approves or he rejects. And that's something that he wants to be able to do himself. Then I ask him, again, the same task. So imagine that you had a tool to assist you when you review the code. People add to your open source project. And I said, what do you see? What can you do? And you will see how it starts digging up in things that don't exist yet. And you kind of go away from GitHub. In my dreams, I can see a section somewhere where I can see the list of all the problems with the code. All the errors I would have to look for myself. So that's something he's already doing himself, right? And that is not done on GitHub. They are already highlighted. For example, it's not going to work because it's in conflict with another file. Or there is a security problem here. You should fix it. And maybe the contributor can see all of that before committing, so it saves my time. I would still need to review the code, though. Even in my dreams, it's not perfect. Nothing can be perfect. I wouldn't trust an algorithm enough to just merge without reading. So merge just means that you approved it. There is too much at stake. Merging a bug wastes everyone's time. What can we learn from this? Yeah?
There must be some sort of testing program to test the code that someone else has written to see whether it will create like a security problem or
Yeah.
something of that sort. And that it must have, or maybe it should list it and give the error, otherwise it must have listed it if he doesn't want to see it at all.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Anyone else? Oh, sorry.
He wants to retain final control.
Yeah,
He doesn't want the AI auto-merging.
yeah, it's true. Yeah,
When listing all the problems or the things that have been changed, maybe he wants it like listed by user, like the contributions one specific user has created, then have a list of all the contributions and another user list of all the contributions.
yeah, that could be an idea. Cool. Anyone else? Okay. So, what can we learn? First, he wants to find bugs as soon as possible, because to him it's a waste of time. Because, as I explained before, if you have a bug, first it's a bad experience, but also as a developer, when you leave a part of your code, merge it, it's hard to go back to it and takes you more time than to fixing it in the first place. Then he wants to be empowered to find complex issues. So what we saw just before is that we can see where he wants the machine to help him and where he wants to keep the control. So he wants the machine to help him find bugs, and this part of finding bugs seems that it's not that nice to do for him, and he wants to be able still to approve or disapprove. So he wants to keep some control, but he's happy for a machine to take over some of the things that he's doing. And then automated system cannot be fully trusted. Again, with the trust, we want to make sure that when we build a product, we make sure that we explain the limitation, for example, of a machine, or also that we want to accentuate on how you can trust us with your code. But also it means, again, that he's going to have to maybe read through it all over again because he still doesn't trust us. And then I ask him again, what else can you do and what else can you see? And he said, maybe it can also tell me we should review a pull request. And again, we go into more and more features that start being away from what we first asked in the beginning. And he said, this already exists for the last person who wrote the code. But it could also be based on who is going to work on this part of the code, who should learn about this part of the code. It could force people to review as soon as possible. Display a notification like, hey, John is waiting for a code review. Please go and review it now. Because people are not on the tool when the notification comes in. And it could be, it needs to be reviewed ASAP because that's value in the process of being created, but it's blocked because we are waiting for something. So that's the last one. Does anyone want to participate and tell me what we can learn from this? Yeah?
It must force the person who's contributing to immediately write the review, otherwise he won't be able to do that.
Yeah? Yeah?
If also select the person that's the most likely to answer it as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Anyone else? Okay. So yeah, we want it to be answered as soon as possible. So it can be by helping them choose the right person, can be by helping them with a notification, and there's a lot of different possibilities here. And also is really attached to creating value. So to him, it's really important that we get this job done, and this will help him achieve his goal, which is to create value as soon as possible. So how could we use these learnings to build product.ai? Because it doesn't exist yet. How could we build it? Yeah?
It needs to include static code analysis to find common bugs.
To find bugs, yeah. Yeah?
The output of all the bugs it finds or any suggestions should go to the developer that created the pull request before.
Yeah, before even submitting.
Before it gets raised.
Yeah, definitely. And your others?
It needs to be a decision helping tool and that's something to act as the reviewer.
Yeah. Cool. So it's ready for an assisted code review, but we need to create a trust relationship with him. Also, we might want to validate the code even before the review request is sent, so that it saves time to him, and that he can review it with as less as possible bugs in it. And then, that's really important, he wants a tool to assist him, not replace him. So now, last method, the shortest of all of them, probably the shortest in the world, called pop quiz. So the story behind pop quiz is that, so I invented this method, don't know if anyone else is using it, probably because the world is big, and I don't know how they call it if they do. But basically, I was a UX architect at APE here, and we had these events with our users, basically industry events, like talks where we explain things about what we were doing every month or so. And what happened is that we wanted to do user research, but we wanted to do it without spending too much money and without spending too much time, and we didn't want to waste our users' time too much. So we wanted to use these events to go out there and interview the people there just before the event starts. So you can imagine it's 30 minutes before the event starts, and you want to do a lot of users. And also, because you want to do a lot of users, and because I think UX is a team effort, you want to involve your team in the activity so that they do user research with you, so that you gain a lot of time as a UX designer, but also everyone can participate and get to understand what the users needs, what are their motivation and frustration. So I did this method with actually one of my colleagues who did it himself, although he's a developer and never had done user research before, and he did it very well. So it's really easy to do with no preparations, apart from this talk, of course. So how does the pop quiz method work? Basically, it's very simple questions for usability tests. And you want to do it mid or late stage because you need to have some kind of interface of solution that you want to do. And you want to do it on prospective users or existing users. Really, you can do both. And you want, it lasts 5 minutes per participant. Again, it can last more if people talk a lot or if you ask a lot of follow-up questions. But 5 minutes is quite short. Yeah?
How many participants?
So again, for every method that I presented, it's 5 participants would be a minimum. However, what we did is, so basically, if you do it regularly, you can reduce the amount of participants, because if I test one prototype today with one participant, improve it, test it tomorrow with another participant, improve it, etc., I'm still going to find out many bugs. So you don't have to do 5 at the same time. You can do them also in the longer term. For interviews, you might want to do a bit more, like 7, 10. But yeah, usability tests, definitely 5 is enough. In these sessions, we usually did 3. So what will you learn with the pop quiz? Again, the user mental model. How do they think? How do they see things? Then you're going to learn about the interface predictability. Can then predict what will happen when they click a button or do something. And you can also see their expectation. What do they expect when they do something, when they click a button? And also if you have usability issues, if you name something a way that users don't understand, for example. So the script, again, is quite simple. You show users a piece of paper with your interface. It can also be a computer, but when you're at an event, it's quite complex. So I just printed the interface myself on a piece of paper. You can also do it with a drawing of your interface that you want to do. You can also do it with text. So then I would ask them, what do you understand from this page? Imagine that you are looking for like a task. So for example, looking for a flat to rent. What would you do? And then what do you expect would happen if you did this, the action that they say they would do? And this third question, you can ask it as many times as you want on as many objects as you want on your page. Again, you can adapt it to your own scenario. So page can be text, a picture. Looking for a flat to rent can be any task you want. Did this can be replaced by any actions. And you'll see how it works. So let's take a use case called Loon Travel. So it's a premium activity marketplace. When you're traveling, you can book activities with premium experts. And I met Laura, and I asked her the question I asked her. So we're going to do it with you this time. So if someone in the room is happy to play the user, then we can do it on you so that you see how it works. So who wants to be the user? No one? There's only 3 questions, and they're very simple, and there's no right or wrong answer. So there's no way to be shy about it. Everyone? Okay, let's do it on everyone. And the first one to answer will be our user. What do you understand from this page? Yeah, go ahead. I know you're a great participant.
Well, basically what it's going to do is it's going to find you great activities which are maybe highly rated if it's going to be premium and something which you might have to pay maybe a little bit extra for.
Yeah, cool.
And you can do it literally from whichever country you live anywhere in the world. And
Yeah.
whatever activity you want to do, whether it's surfing, rock climbing, you just type in that what area what you want to find, and you can find activities, and it's going to pop up with the results for surfing in the world, basically.
I love it because you just did all my questions in once. So cool. We're just going to use what you said. So exactly, then I would ask you, what would you do? You just said that you would fill this field here anywhere in the world, type where you are, and then click on Find Activities. And then I would ask, what do you expect would happen if you clicked on Find Activities? Yeah, I guess you would click on that. And then you said, what did you say again? Find Activities?
Find activities.
Yeah.
It will list the results for whatever activity you search for.
Okay.
And then underneath that, you'll see a whole lot of activities like where to surf,
Yeah.
beginners, advanced, or whatever.
Okay, cool.
I'm guessing.
Yeah? So what can we take away from this? You can't answer because you talked.
That people want plenty of different options.
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Your turn.
So you want to have a different level of activities. That means that some of them are going to be more beginner level and some of the others more difficult level.
Yeah. That's something we can learn.
Yeah, I was thinking they would want plenty of different options, so including level, price, exact location.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all things that we can get out of this interview. As we're going to focus on the usability side of things, we're going to just match it to the question that I asked. First, he said that it's a homepage or marketplace to find activities. You said a bit more. Obviously, it's Laura's answer that I worked on. But then she said she would type Paris in the field and click on Find Activities. So that's the same scenario. And then she would expect to see activities after clicking on Find Activities. What happens is that she expects something, but it's not actually what she's going to see. What happens is that she's on the home page, she's clicking on Find Activities, and there's a real scenario. Then she sees a sign-up page. Happens a lot, right? And she has to create an account, and then she's going to see the activities. So she doesn't expect to see that. And look at the sign-up page. It's pretty, create an account. Ooh, love to create an account. So how do you think this expectation that is not met can impact loan travel? What is it going to do to their business? Everyone's saying conversion, or who's talking?
I would immediately go to another website instead.
Okay, so they can lose users. Anything else? Same thing? Yeah, cool. So yeah, first it frustrates them. So they leave a website and never come back, which leads to low sign-up conversion rate and few returning visitors. If you're doing a bit of business, you know this is very bad. Then users can also sign up, like they really want to find out what's behind this, but then they don't know if the service is for them, so they will end up, the business will end up with a high percentage of inactive users because they realize, oh, actually that's not for me, and then they have a user that don't want to use their product because it's not for them. So how could we use these learnings to improve loan travel? Yeah?
Must only create an account once you've actually booked for an activity, if you really do need someone to create an account.
Yeah?
So you must first see everything, then once you found the activity,
Then you receive a sign up. Yeah?
Sorry,
Yeah. Sorry.
Creating an account should be very easy.
Yeah.
Literally like just an email.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Probably you can fill in the rest later.
It's a good point. There's a lot of fields there that are not really useful. Any other thing that we can do? A what? A demo of a website, yeah. So yeah, basically everything you said. You can remove a sign-up page from this flow, make it come up later. We can show a glimpse of the activities on the sign-up page to kind of explain what it's about and if it's suitable for them. We can also explain the benefits of signing up. Like, you should really sign up because we're premium and our deals are secret, for example. And so now it's the second example and the last one, so I hope you will participate and another person will do a user. So what do you understand from this page? Who wants to do it? Again, you see there was no bad or wrong answer. It's all so easy. Anyone wants to do a user? Okay, go ahead.
I'm getting the idea that someone's going to come to your house for 3 hours and give you a private wine tasting session.
Mm-hmm.
£200. You can choose the date, number of people.
Cool. And what if you wanted to, if you found this activity and you want to book it, what would you do?
I'd hit inquire now.
Mm-hmm. And what would you expect would happen if you clicked on Inquire Now?
It's going to take me to some booking form.
Okay, cool. Straightforward. And you're actually like Laura, so that's good. So yes, it's an activity page. You got that pretty easily. Then you would enter the number of people at a date. Well, that's Laura. But then she would click on Inquire Now, like you. And then she would expect to see a form with some fields to fill with and a confirmation afterwards, like, oh, the inquiry is done. No, that's not what happens. What happens is, when you click on activity, when you're on activity and you click on Inquire Now, you go to your activity list, which is up there in your menu. And then you see your activity, and then you have to click on Inquire Now. And then you see the inquiry form, okay? So again, how could it impact loon travel that this expectation is not met?
Yeah, basically, that one page is useless.
Yeah, it is.
It's an extra click which you don't want.
Yeah, and you don't need.
On the same button.
On the same button, what?
It says inquire now, like on both.
Yeah, same button. Yeah.
People may think they inquired and actually anything happened.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Well, presumably if it's going to list activities, then there's not just one option, so you should display that on the first page, not the second.
Yeah. True. Any other ideas?
I was thinking if they were to look for a few more activities, rather the first button maybe should be like add to basket so that they know
Yeah.
if they're on the basket page.
Great. Yeah. Exactly. So first, in terms of business, it frustrates users who are less likely to complete the inquiry process. Then it leads to a low booking conversion. Then also users might think their inquiry actually went through, and they're really upset because you never get back to them, and it truly happened. And then you have low booking conversions and bad reviews, because they're not answering, it doesn't work. So how could we use these learnings to improve loon travel? You already gave a lot of ideas, but if you have any more, you can tell them now. Anyone has another idea? No? Okay. So it's really what everyone said, but first, you can change the wording of Inquire Now button to add to my activity list so that it matches actually what's going to happen. You can also change the wording of my activity list to my basket, and the name of button to add to my basket, so it's still logical. You can also skip completely the activity list part, and if you really want to keep this part, create another button to allow this step. For example, add to my activity list and add to my basket, or add to my activity list and Inquire Now. So that's it for the methods. But now, if you just go out there with these methods, you will probably not succeed. And I will tell you how to succeed. So first, when you do user research, you need to create a friendly and open-minded atmosphere. So how do you do that? First, you can introduce yourself to them and start by asking contextual questions. So for example, in the events, I would go to people and be like, hey, how you doing? I'm Charlotte. Then you get to know their name, which is pretty cool, without asking what's your name. And then you can ask them, what are you doing here? Do you enjoy the session? And then you can say, by the way, I'm from up here. Do you have 5 minutes to answer my questions? First, at this stage, they won't say no. And then they know a bit about you, and they're more comfortable about asking questions, answering your questions. If you do long sessions, like the job to be done, you want to provide them food and drinks if they're coming to your office, so that they feel comfortable. If they're hungry, they can eat. If they're thirsty, they can drink, and they can speak a bit more. And also you want to tell them that it's not a test. There's no right, there's no wrong answer. We just want to understand how it works. And if there's a problem, it's in our machine, not you. And one thing that you can say, and that I say, although I'm actually a designer and I've been involved in the design, is I haven't been involved in the design. Because then they're not afraid to actually tell you, I don't like it. So really, you can say that even you're actually the designer. Then you want to avoid bias, right? You want to have answers that are really useful. To avoid bias, you have to use neutral words. For example, if you ask them to look at a page, you don't ask them, does anything disturb you? Because then it brings a negative answer. You ask them, does anything stand out? So that it's neutral. Then you want to select participants in your target audience. So heard that a lot. Unfortunately, your mom is not always your users. And it doesn't work to do it on her if she's not the target of your product. Because behavior changes from people, and you want to adapt your product to the actual people who are going to use it. Also, you don't want to ask leading questions or influence participants' answer. So for example, if you talk about the weather, you're doing something for a weather app, you don't ask them if they say something. You don't ask, is it because you don't like the rain? Because then they jump on your answer and they'll be like, yeah, I don't like the rain, that's why. And then they're like, whew, don't have to answer any more questions, I'm done. So that's an answer which is not very useful for you, right? And then you want to also be aware of the emotions that certain situations create and that are going to change the way people answer. For example, like I told you with Happy Here, we went in these events, and the events start in 30 minutes. So when we're doing user sessions, one of them might be at 20, the sessions start at 30, and they're like, oh God, they just asked me to answer some questions. Am I going to be late for sessions? I need to go there to book my seats, to make sure that I'm not standing. There's all this that is going in their mind, and you want to adapt your speech to them to be able to make them feel comfortable. So you would say, it only lasts 5 minutes. I'm actually looking at the time while we're speaking to make sure that you don't miss the session, that you'll be there in time, that you will find a seat. You can even say, like, I reserved a seat for you already. So you want to make sure that people feel comfortable when they're talking to you. Otherwise, when you will ask questions, they will be upset and they will speak too fast and they won't really be collaborative. And then the last tips, and I will end the session on this, is that you have to ask why, and again, why, right? So you've seen before, I will give you an example, but you've seen before in the example that I showed you of the answers of people, these answers are not one full answer. It's a lot of small answers, because every time they said a sentence and they stopped, I asked why. And then they do another sentence, they explain you, and I'm like, oh, but really why? And then they keep going, and you understand at the end what is the true problem that they have. So for example, something simple. Why did you buy a backpack, right? The person tells you, because I needed one and I didn't have any. Imagine you stop there. So you're backpack friends and you need to improve your backpack, and you ask one of your users and he tells you that. You're like, oh, cool. Now I know you needed a backpack. What kind of backpack I'm going to do? I don't know. And then you're like, okay, why? And he's like, because I was going skiing and I needed it. Okay, so now I know he was going skiing. So maybe when I build my product, I will do a backpack that is good for when you can put it in the snow, it would still be all right. And then you ask him why, and he says, because I needed to carry water and food during the day on the slopes. And you're like, okay, so he's actually going to really ski with a backpack on his back, and he will carry water and food. So maybe my product can have a water pocket, so that's easier for him to actually drink on the slopes. Maybe I can do something that refrigerates the food in some way. So it's just to show you how powerful asking why is. And it is very, very hard to do, because it brings very awkward conversations. Asking why 5 times to a person is really weird, and sometimes they look at you and they're like, that's obvious, no? And you're like, well, I don't know much about this. Can you tell me more about it? And they explain you, but You really have to persist and to force yourself to ask this. And even I practice user research quite often, and I keep sometimes forgetting to ask why. And every time I did and I look at my notes, I'm like, oh no, I didn't ask why, so now this answer is completely useless. I've not learned anything. But you see that in the conversation, you kind of forget about asking why, because sometimes you're just embarrassed to do so. Don't be, it's very important. Thank you.